All right, well, aloha and mahalo for joining us this evening. So this is going to be our very first workshop of our series. It's brought to you by University of Hawai'i Hilo, the Marine and Environmental Research Institute of the Pacific, and Hawaii Farmers Union United. So funding for this workshop, this free workshop series has been provided by the USDA Beginning Farmers and Ranchers Program and the Socially Disadvantaged Farmers and Ranchers Program. My name is Darlene Kaya Maderas. I'll be your co-host for the series. I am the Hawaii Farmers Union United Executive Assistant. We provide assistance to all of our HFUU members for their communication and membership needs. HFUU represents family farms in 16 regional chapters across 6 Hawaiian islands. HFUU supports Hawaii farmers through legislation, lobbying, and educational outreach. Through cooperation and networking, we are able to help regional farmers markets, food hubs, and create regular events for chapters and farmers to learn more. Can learn from each other, connect, grow, eat good food together. It's a great experience, and it's less than $1 a week to support our family farmers. And we offer a lot of membership discounts.
Kind of breaking up here.
So you can learn more about that as well. So we appreciate you folks joining us tonight. If you'd like to receive more info on the future workshops that we're going to be providing throughout the summer, you can introduce yourself in the chat, include your information, where you're from, what you do. If you're not comfortable sharing that with everyone, you can share it with Maria or I. And then we'll also be doing a poll at the end, so you can include the information there. And that's going to be a private information. So our presenter this evening is Peyton Carlin. He's provided an outline, and we'll be including the link inside the Google Drive that we shared. If you do have any questions during the just put them in the chat or the Q&A, and then we'll have time to go over questions after Peyton's presentation. I'd now like to introduce you to the person making this workshop possible. This is Dr. Maria Haas from UH Hilo.
Aloha kako. Thank you to everybody for joining us tonight. I also particularly want to thank the Hawaii Farmers Union and Darlene, who's helping us organize this. And of course, our presenter, Peyton Carlin. I just want to say a few thank yous to people who did support us in this. We did this last year as an aquaculture speakers series. It was a good success, and a lot of people have expressed interest in agriculture. So that's why we're working on agriculture this year before we launch into the aquaculture series later in the fall. I also just wanted to mention that the Marine and Environmental Research Institute of the Pacific is the actual sponsor that's receiving the USDA funds. They have regional programs throughout Micronesia, South Pacific, and Hawaii. So we are appreciative for them. But thanks to you all. And as our moderator had suggested, if you can introduce yourselves and leave your contact information, we'd really appreciate that, because we can advise you of future training events and send you additional information. So again, thank you so much. And I hope everybody enjoys the seminar.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Thank you, Darlene. My name is Peyton Carlin. I've been involved with agriculture for a long time now, from grazing fruit trees in the neighborhood growing up as a kid to high school, organic garden that we had, to working as a WOOFER in New Zealand in my early 20s, and going on a lot of different farms, from sheep farms to row crops to orchards, that kind of thing. And then graduating from Evergreen State College in environmental science in 1989. I was more interested in marine biology and aquaculture at the time, shellfish mainly. But realized the importance of terrestrial farming. And from there, I got a job at the Molino Creek Farm in Davenport, California, just north of Santa Cruz, and specialty was dry farm tomatoes and every other kind of vegetable and you can think of, from the onions and garlics to corn, all 5 different kinds of lettuces, the basil, a wide variety of things, including flowers. And it was a real, it was a small farm, but very production oriented. And after 3 seasons of that, I thought, well, it's time to get my own farm. So I moved to Baja California, Sur, Mexico in 1996 and started my own farm down there, growing oranges, figs, dates, mangoes, grapes, guavas, a carrizo that was woven into mats, a traditional building material, and space for annual crops. And and during that 18-year spell in Mexico, I got a master's degree in agriculture at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and then I ended up leaving Mexico, spent some time working in Peru, and then Big Island, and I've been here for 8 years, farming and teaching agriculture. And living here. So that's basically a little bit about my background. I'm here to talk about soil and soil fertility strategies. Okay, it's an introductory presentation. So I'm going to start out with the concept that really the soil is really a foundation of almost every agricultural enterprise. The soil is going to reflect pretty much all your crop health and animal health down the line. So thinking about it as a foundation, along with air, water, sunlight, and nighttime, soil is very important. The way I like to think about it is that healthy soil makes healthy plants, makes healthy people. And it starts out at the soil. So let's take a look at what healthy soil means. So when I think about healthy soil, it's the optimum level of macro and micronutrients in the soil. So all of the macro and micronutrients in the soil are going to translate into the plant. So what am I talking about? Those it's what I'm talking about is nitrate, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, sulfur, sodium, zinc, manganese, getting a little dark, copper, chloride, iron, zinc, all the macronutrients that go into the plant are pretty much the micronutrients that are made up into molecules that form the vitamins in that by the plant to go into our own health. So there's a link between that. So your soil must have all the optimum levels of micro and macronutrients in it. A neutral pH between 6 and 7. I put 7, but it could also be 7.5. Now, the importance of that is that here in the tropics and our volcanic soils that we have here, you have a tendency to get a very low pH. And then during a low pH, the iron locks up with the phosphorus, sometimes the calcium, and so you have nutrients that are there, but they can't get released to the plant because the chemical bind of the low pH makes it impossible. So what you want to think about instead of all that soil chemistry is that what you're shooting for is a 6 to 7.5 pH. Okay, so and that's an important for healthy soil. High level of organic matter. Okay, organic matter is important for pretty much, you think of 3 different things. One of them is water holding capacity. The higher your percentage of organic matters in your soil, the higher the water holding capacity. And it can be at the rate of what they say is 1% gain in organic matter translates into 65,000 gallons of water holding capacity per acre foot. So that's an acre of soil or a foot of soil by an acre of land. So water holding capacity. It also has the capacity to hold the nutrients. So your nutrients, they're in your soil, get bound by the organic matter in your soil. So it's holding your nutrients as well as it's stimulating your microbial community. That's your fungi and bacteria, protozoa, and nematodes and the like. So the next point is a diverse and abundant microbial community. So what does that mean? When you're talking about the pH, the fungi like a lower pH, bacteria like a higher pH. Now, what do these do for the plant? They aid in the uptake of nutrients. The bacteria you can think of sometimes as little nodules of nutrient and nitrogen. The fungi, mycorrhizae, you could think of as being like a transport system from the soil solution nutrients into the plant roots. So it's enabling the uptake of nutrients. Okay, so that's really important, that diverse microbial community in your soil. And then aeration, your roots need to be aerated, they need to breathe. So there's got to be some aeration and pores that in the soil that can be taken up by air and water, so that these pores are filled with that. One thing that the microbial community, there's a what's it, mucilage they call it, and it's an excretion of the bacteria and fungi, and that kind of binds the soil and helps with the texture and the aggregate content of the soil, which creates these pore spaces for air and water, and that's really important as well. So how does that translate? So when you have this healthy soil, you start out with the healthy soil, you'll get it to where you exactly want it, with microbial life, micronutrients and all that. Okay, so the plant has the ability to take all the micronutrients that it needs and incorporate that into its body function. So it's going to have, when it has the optimum level of macronutrients, and it has all those tools to work with, then it can create itself. It has natural immunities to pests and pests and pathogens that it wouldn't have if it was a weaker plant. So when you have a healthy plant, it makes it stronger in its environment, and that's a really important quality to have. Is to have that resistance to pests and pathogens. So you have the healthy plant. So the healthy soil translates to a healthy plant, which translates to healthy people. So healthy people, what does that mean? It means a high nutrient density of food. So you can actually take like an orange, for example, and take that to the laboratory, or broccoli, and you can test the nutrient density in the fruit, whatever it may be. So I like to think of like all broccoli is not equal, in that if you have a broccoli that was grown in a very depleted soil, it maybe had synthesized fertilizers and pesticides in it, and it was kept alive by the pesticides, and had just the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, NPK that's usually put in there into a dead soil in a fertilized, synthesized form, the nutrient density and the quality of that fruit is not going to be the same as opposed to a very healthy soil with all macro and micronutrients, and the ability for the plant to uptake that into its system. So That's really what I'm talking about. When healthy soil makes healthy plants, makes healthy people. So, so that higher quality and better taste. The taste is one thing as well. I was just thinking about tomatoes. If you ever had a tomato that's come over here and they pick it right as it's breaking, which means it's green, and then right as it turns like a little yellow going into red, you pick it, it'll ripen, and but it does not taste like something that's been grown on the vine, dry farmed, and you pick it right there. The way two different qualities of product right there. So higher quality and better taste. So okay, that's what the healthy. So what I want to talk about now is know your soil. Okay, because now what's interesting, because I don't know exactly who I'm talking to, what kind of operations you have, where you are. And this island these islands are very, very diverse. So there's a lot of different places, climates, rainfall regimes, soil development, and history. So what I think is very important is to know your soil and know your soil's history. So was it old sugarcane land? What was going on before this? What were the amendments that were they used? Was it synthesized fertilizers and pesticides? Was it organic operation? Are you lucky enough to have be farming where there was a dairy? So you have a lot of manures already incorporated. Is your soil like still kind of rocky and needs to be developed more? So really take an inventory of what you have. So soil history and then soil analysis. It's really important to know your soil. If you're going to look at all the micro and macronutrients in your soil, you got to know what they are. And the only way to do that is take a soil sample and get it into the laboratory, analyze it, and then look for yourself. Okay. And then you're going to see what you need to add and how you're going to manipulate your soil to bring it to its highest fertility. So, so I have like a couple resources for that. And one is the UH, and there's a UH in Cooperative Extension in Kona, Hilo, and Kamuela. And I don't know how many of you on other islands, but they're all over the islands. And I've taken soil samples to them, and it's pretty good. They give you a lot of them. They don't give you every single micronutrient. And I don't think their interpretations super clear about, okay, well, these are the optimum ranges, and this is where you want to you want this number inside the optimum range on every single micronutrient. And they don't really give that. And then if there is something that's out of whack, how do you fix it? So I found that Gianna Boggs she lives here on the Big Island, Beyond Organic Research. She takes it to a lab that's on the mainland, and she's a PhD, and she really comes up with a very interpretive design, and it's like, okay, do this, this, and this. These are the amendments that you want to put in to correct your soil. Okay, your soil, for example, your soil is 5.6. Okay, how are you going to get it, to above 6 or where exactly you want it? So she really is good at kind of directing you for quantity and how to get the amendments to correct your soil. And there's fruit growers laboratories. If you have a substantial crop of an orchard crop of citrus or avocados, they're really good with diagnosing soil. They'll take leaf samples out of your fruit orchard and see exactly what nutrients are missing from the uptake of nutrient, and somewhat on how to correct it. So
I've used them when I was doing my master's thesis on my farm in Mexico, and they did do a really good job for that. So those are three places that I know about that work out pretty well. There's others if you want to do research, but yeah, I think so. Know your soil, okay? Soil amendments and fertility strategies. So liming is something that's done for the raising of your pH, and it's like a calcium carbonate, a dolomite, that kind of thing. Those are the kind of amendments that you use to raise the pH, and that's always a good thing. And one thing is when you're thinking about what pH to go to, like as a farmer, what is your crop? What's the cultivar? What are the intricacies of the environment that it's most suited to? So that if it wants this pH and what it does best, try to fit the pH to the cultivar as much as possible. And they're all just a little bit different. So research that. So compost and vermicompost, to raising your organic matter in the soil, a really good amendment to do that and to stimulate microbial growth in the soil is compost. And what compost is it's decomposed plant material or animal manures. Chantel's going to get more into composting than I am right now, but basically the idea is to merge the two together in a fashion that stimulates microbial growth. So what I like to do is, like, I'll take like a hay or clippings of grass or leaf, and that will be my carbon. And I'll do what's called the lasagna style compost pile. And what happens is you take you take your carbon plant material, lay it down, probably like say, maybe a rectangle, maybe a little bigger than a sheet of plywood on the ground, and then take a manure and put a layer of manure up that. So you have like 5-6 inches of carbon, maybe 1 inch of manure, 1 inch of carbon, 1 inch of manure. So you make a pile that way, at the same time giving it some water and moisture. So I've made these things a lot, and you come up like a little, maybe 1.5 meters high, and you come back the next day, and that pile is up to like 120 degrees, 140 degrees, that you just stimulated so many microbes in that. And then you just brought in the condition for them to really decompose quickly. So all that population and them doing their work is giving off heat, and it also gives off some carbon dioxide, but it also takes the carbon and it fixes it into the humus, which is what you're looking for in done compost. Very rich in all kinds of microbial life. Some of it's in larvae form, some of it's still alive, but that's one of the amendments that's very, very important for either under trees to fertilize them or in your row crops to keep fertility up as an amendment. And then vermicompost, that's using worms. There's something about the worm gut that stimulates the most beneficial microorganisms. And for in my thesis, I was looking at this question, and there's this thing called vesicular or buscular mycorrhizae. It's a fungi, and what it does is it goes into the roots and it brings nutrients from the soil into the roots for the plant to uptake, and then it gets some carbon and it uses that for its body structure. So it's this exchange of nutrients, and it really helps the plant uptake nutrient. So vermicompost is really going to stimulate your microbial community in a really good way. And again, Chantel's going to go further into that, right, for her talk. Nitrogen fixing annual and perennial cover crops. So a lot of the leguminous crops, plants like your cowpeas, pigeon peas, your flava beans, sun hemp. There's a lot of plants that a lot of crops that you'll plant and grow these things just to benefit your soil. So these plants have the ability to take nitrogen out of the atmosphere and fix it in the root nodules of the plants that add nitrogen into the soil. So when you till the whole plant in, not only are you getting all the micronutrients of the plant itself, but you've also stimulated the nitrogen in your soil. So that's always a good strategy. You could do that as in the alleys of your orchards, or when you go like to give your field a rest after, like, say, a sweet potato crop. A sun hemp is a good thing to plant because it takes away the parasitic nematodes that are going to be a pest to your next crop. So that nemocide that the roots of the sun hemp have are taking away your nematode problem. So these some of these cover crops to engage them is going to benefit your soil, and also benefit your soil in two ways: to block pests and as well as increase organic matter and nutrient into your soil. So the cover crops is an important strategy. I always think the OMRI, Organic Materials Research Institute approved. If you're thinking about organic certification, if it says OMRI on the package there, like if it's Nutri-Rich or if it's a dolomite or whatever kind of amendment that you're going to buy at a store or something like that, if it says OMRI, it means that it's it falls under organic certification. So it's not synthesized fertilizer or pesticide. It's slower release. It's of organic nature. So I use the example of Nutri-Rich. Well, that one is a turkey manure derivative. It comes in little pellets. So, it has all the micronutrients that are in that, and it's in a pellet, and it's slow release. It's not going to run off. It's gonna hold and slow release. So those are kind of the things that I would look for when I'm looking for amendments to work in my farm or garden. Animal manures, I always think it's great to incorporate. If you're gonna have a small farm, incorporate an animal operation, whether it's a small poultry, or if you have room for bigger animals, or if you don't have room for animals, just be able to know where there is like you can get an abundance of horse manure or goat manure or maybe a dairy or something. And a good strategy on that is if you take your cover crop, and before you till it in, you put a manure on it, and then the Molino Creek farm did that and was real successful with it. Crop rotation. If you do one crop over and over and over and over again, every crop's just a little bit different, and it has just a little bit of different, of what it really likes and what it really doesn't like. Like, for instance, corn is really high in nitrogen. You can't have a corn crop over and over and over again because it's going to deplete the nitrogen. So then you would rotate that with, say, a soybean, some leguminous crop that's going to get that nitrogen back into the soil. So those are some strategies. Oh, biochar. Biochar is it's like, the way I hear it described the best is like if you have like a hotel full of empty rooms, and what really goes in there really great is microorganisms. So it's like a holding place for microorganisms and nutrients and the like. So it's like yeah, it's like a storage place, and it won't let the nutrients run off and that, and it holds the nutrients fairly tightly, but not so tight that a plant root can't take it off. So there's a lot of value in biochar. So last thing, soil cultivation. So the reasons for soil cultivation is for creating seed beds so that you can plant, like for seeding easier, or if you're going to transplant, you have like a nice soft bed to work with. It increases the permeability of your soil surface and subsoil for water and air. So, you know, a lot of times, like if you go into a field, the first thing you want to do is sort of rip it, which means you have a tongs on the back of the tractor that go about 2 feet, 2.5 feet, and they'll go through the whole field that way. Opens up the air, especially if you have some tight clays like we have around here, and allows for water, and then a rototiller on top. We'll get into that in a second. Incorporating crop residues, manures, compost, and other amendments. So when you put on like say you're going to put an inch of compost on there, your rototiller would go incorporate it, or your cover crop to incorporate your cover crop. So it's all mixed in with the soil, and which allows the microbes to be in contact with the stubble, and that which increases the rate of decomposition. So it promotes root growth and pore space, so the roots can get through the soil easier with the pore space, as well as the air and the water. Weed control, you know, so if you can get into a field and you can get in and rototill a wheat field before it goes to seed, you've just taken all that seed stock out. Everything that germinated is gone. It's not going to reproduce. Now, if you do that again, then what you're doing is you're starting to get rid of the weed seed that's in the soil, so you're kind of lessening your weed problem. Weeds are big competition and source of crop loss. So the less you can reduce the seed bank, it is important. So the methods of cultivation, now it really has to do with the scale of your operation. Or, you know, if you're talking about a small garden, like for your kitchen garden, or how much energy you want to put into it. But I've done the hand cultivation using shovels and hoes and rakes. The French intensive method, where it's kind of like a ripper. You're going 2 shovel lengths down into a hole and cultivating it through a row with a shovel the whole way. You know, it's one of those things that you kind of have to be there to see how it works, but it's very labor extensive, but it works really well, right? You can't do that for an acre or 2, but you can do it for a small garden. The mechanical cultivation using tractors, rippers, rototillers, spaders, and bed shapers. So the bigger your operation is, you're really going to want want to have some kind of mechanization. And all those tools combined will create a great environment for row crops or your orchard, planting your orchard or whatever it might be. And maybe I should explain what that is. So the ripper, the rototiller and the spader, the ripper really digs deep and opens up the whole soil. The rototiller works on the top 5 to 6 inches and gets everything into a kind of a finer sort of a material for planting on top and shaping the beds with. So, and the spader is something that you would go over a bed with. It doesn't flip it all around. It'll take it, put the spaders in, and it'll move it over and then up and work backwards like that. So it doesn't affect the soil profile. Every time that you use a rototiller, you're turning all the microbes up, turning them upside down and all that. You're destroying the profile. This way it doesn't destroy the soil profile, but it does aerate the soil. A very effective tool. And the last thing is like tillage is great and all that kind of stuff, but reduced tillage is really important. That you could really have a harmful impact on your soil if you're using your too much tillage, too much rototilling and that kind of thing. I think that's it. I think I'm going to open up for questions now. That was a lot of different topics. So yeah.
Go ahead and open up our poll, and then we're gonna open up for questioning. We did have one question come in, and she didn't hear the plant recommendation for nematodes.
It's sun hemp.
Okay, awesome. Right now, I don't see any other questions. We'll be taking questions from you folks. If you want to just turn on your sound, you can go ahead and feel free to ask any questions. I've got the poll live. If you folks don't mind filling out the poll, it'll help us get some information for future workshops. Janet asks, is there empirical evidence for more nutritious produce based on healthier soil?
Yes. Yes, when you look at the nutrient density and what's in a broccoli that has healthy soil, there's a lot more nutrient density in that. And actually, when I was talking to Jonna Boggs, she's done some work with like blood work on people and translating into produce and trying to make that correlation, directly through science. And she has found some correlation there. It's a tough one to get at, but it's definitely there.
She also asked if there are any publications.
Yeah, Jana Boggs wrote a book called Beyond Organics, and she, if she would go to that website, she could find that book. Yeah, that's the one that I know of. When I was doing my thesis, there wasn't a whole lot. This has been an idea that's been around for a long time, but the amount of research that's done to make that correlation, I think I should talk to Jana about exactly the other ones, because I know she's done her own work on it, but I'm pretty sure other people have done it too.
questions from our audience?
With respect to cover crops, should we be planting those as part of crop rotation, or can we be planting them permanently around fruit trees or other trees?
Yeah, I think using, like, if you're gonna use, you're talking about like an orchard situation opposed to, like, say, an annual row crop kind of situation where I think if you know to plant those nitrogen fixing cover crops in the alleyways of your farm is a really good idea. It keeps the weeds down and the grass out. I always like to think that, you know, if you a lot of farms have like a grass where grass isn't that great of a thing to have because it kind of sucks nutrients out, doesn't allow water to get into, and it's not really benefiting your trees all that much or your soil. Where if you have something like a cover crop, that kind of thing, then you're producing something that's really benefiting your soil and therefore benefiting your plants. So yeah, the answer to that one is yes. Use the cover crops in the alleyways and in your orchards. It's yeah, you know one thing is like I just remember in Mexico the yellow and white clovers, which is a nitrogen fixing leguminous plant. It's also high nutrition for goats and that kind of thing. So those orchards had that in the seed bank. So during spring it would all come up. It would come up to its prime, and it would be cut and then fed to goats, but then the roots in that would stay in the ground, and they would have those nitrogen nodules in it, and all the root matter would make more organic matter, translate more organic matter, you know, through decomposition. So yeah, I definitely recommend cover crops in the orchard.
Where do you get your biochar from?
You know, you can get it from there's in Hawai'i, there's a macadamia nut operation that I think makes it. You can make it yourself. There's a product put out by the Blue Dragon Farm that incorporates an inoculated biochar. They've inoculated with the fish amino acids that's made from fish emulsion from fish waste, and at the same time compost and vermicompost. It's an unbelievable product. So you can buy it or you can make it yourself. The whole process. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and then I have another question. What about magnesium? There seems to be a lot of press about magnesium deficiency in soil, and how might that affect health?
Yeah, it's one of those macronutrients, and like there's a balance between they talk about a calcium to magnesium ratio, and it's a really important ratio to have. That I guess that those two elements look kind of the same to a plant, and they can get confused. So sometimes there'll be more magnesium than calcium, and there'll be a calcium deficiency, not because of lack of calcium, but there's a competition in the nutrients. So you know, magnesium is one of those things that's really important in photosynthesis. It would so that, you know, it's just if you don't have the correct balance of that, you're gonna affect, you know, the calcium deficiency as well as magnesium deficiency. So that ratio is really important to get. So, and again, it's like if you don't know, if you don't haven't analyzed your soil, and you don't know exactly how much magnesium there is compared to calcium, you really don't know if that's going to be the correct thing is to put more calcium or magnesium. It's really good to know the soil before you check it out. But yeah, that's important, very important element.
Considered organic. They use it to green up palms.
Magnesium sulfide. I don't know about that one. Magnesium sulfide. A lot of these things, like if you look at calcium and dolomite, and some of those, they're ground up rock. But magnesium sulfide, I'm not too sure if it's ground up rock or it's a synthesized material. I don't know about that. Oh, then yeah, I would say that, yeah, I guess it sounds like it's more mined now. Okay, that would be more mined. So yeah, I would think that it would be. It's like, yeah, anything that's mined and crushed up usually is it's the OMRI approved and not synthesized.
To the biochar, and if you could talk about it quickly, and then about the difference between that and charcoal or wood ash.
Okay, the wood ash is that's if you leave those coals going and it just goes all the way to ash and then there's nothing there. Biochar is that you're stopping the burn at a certain timing, so that it still has its basic structure, and then when you kind of like polarize it, you can make a lot of finer particles with that. So it's really one of those things that you kind of have to go by feel with, as you're making it, and every material is going to be slightly different. Yeah, but it's all on its way to like combustion through, the phases of combustion, and the biochar is when it's first going through it. It's penetrated the whole wood, but it hasn't completely turned to ash yet.
Korean natural farming microorganisms that are imported, like bokashi, do you think they might displace actual indigenous soil microbes, and is that a bad thing if so?
Yeah, the Korean natural farming is using getting the indigenous microorganisms of the area. So when you take the rice and you put it under the forest duff, that the microorganisms in the forest duff, those are the indigenous ones there, you're stimulating those. And so the Korean natural farming would be using the indigenous microorganisms. And I always think that, yeah, that's a great, it's always good to stimulate those communities and those populations. Like the EM, that comes from the efficient microorganisms from Japan and that. I guess I was exposed to that when I was at the Earth School, the Escuela de Agricultura de Región Tropical y Húmedo in Costa Rica, and I was at that school. They were working with the EM from Japan and some Japanese representatives from there. And then there was a section of the school that was gathering their own microorganisms from the forests of the area. And to me, I think it makes more sense to gather the microorganisms from the area you're living in. You know, I'm not too sure how dangerous to bring them from other areas, but you know, the way that these things multiply and the different enzymes and everything that's happening with these populations, they're probably going to conform to the ones from Japan are probably going to conform to the microorganisms of the surrounding area. But that's my thought on it.
Gathering them, but I guess people are ordering the microorganisms on Amazon and such indigenous microorganism technologies. I guess it's being sold on Amazon.
See, yeah, I mean, that's, I think, you know, that's probably a huge market and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, I just know that lasagna compost pile that I was talking about making, I just know that if I start that thing, it's gonna have like 1 trillion microorganisms stimulated. The populations are gonna go off the roof very, very quickly, and they're all gonna come from the surrounding areas. So I think that you know, that free natural farming is one way to make a whole bunch of them, but compost is another way to make them. You know, there's a lot of different ways to kind of do the same thing.
Sounds like you've got fans in the lasagna pile. She does it as well, so she appreciates that. So we're wrapping up everything right now. Does anybody else have any more questions? All right, I just want to mahalo everybody for who took the poll. I'm gonna leave it open for a couple more minutes if you folks are still completing that, or if you'd like to take the poll still. It is still open. And then I just want to mahalo everybody for joining us tonight. And we will have part 2 of our soil workshop that will be in 2 weeks. And there's going to be more information on that. It'll be the same Zoom link, same process, same time. Information is on the Hawaii Farmers Union website. So if you are ever curious about upcoming workshops, it will be on there. And then if you did provide your email, we'll also go ahead and send it out to you directly. So you have that information. We've got a lot of great workshops planned for the summer. It's going to be a pretty amazing series. So keep in touch and make sure you guys check that out. And then mahalo Payton for sharing your ike and your mana'o on this subject. We are very grateful. And if anybody has any more questions before we leave for Payton, now's your chance. And I see a message about a copy of the video recording. You folks will be able to access that from the Google Drive folder that was shared. I'll go ahead and share that link one more time. And then you'll be able to access all of that information that's in that folder. So you won't have access immediately. Just go ahead and request access, and Dr. Maria will go ahead and get you folks that access once it's requested. So go ahead and check out the link in the chat. And if you've input your email throughout the chat or on the poll, we'll go ahead and make sure we get that information out to you as well. Looks like we actually have one more question. So I'd like to try to build healthy soil in a very sandy, depleted area. Where should I start with minimal funds?
In a sandy depleted, is that what it was?
Yes, sandy, depleted area, and it says at a school.
But I'd really start with organic matter and compost. I think those would be the amendments that I would use. I mean, I don't know how sandy it is and how depleted, but compost should be well recommended. I think that would be the first one that I would recommend. Is it like a black sand kind of thing? Or is it more of a coral sand? The coral sand is really high in calcium, and that could be a really like good magnesium and calcium contributor to that soil. If it's black sand, but any way you look at it, I think both the more the compost that you put into it, that would be the number one thing. And then again, see about a soil analysis to bring everything else into balance.
Some options as well. She said it was coral sand. And then somebody did mention just being aware of bringing in microorganisms. It is regulated by the Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, I just think that there's so many here. I'd probably I just go with the ones here. I wouldn't probably go for off-island microorganisms because there's plenty here.
Don't just layer it on top the sand, and definitely native. We all agree on that. Okay, everyone. Well, it is past 7 now, so we are going to go ahead and close up this workshop. Mahalo nui for joining us, and keep an eye out for our next workshop coming up in 2 weeks. I hope y'all got to learn plenty from this, and keep an eye out for the emails and the new workshops to come. Go ahead and keep sharing those emails in the poll or in the chat, and I will go ahead and keep this up so that we can keep collecting that information so we can get the information out to you folks. And mahalo nui again, Peyton. Appreciate you and Dr. Maria for putting this all together.
Mahalo, Peyton. Mahalo, darling.
Mahalo and aloha. Thank you all for coming.
Yes, mahalo for joining us.